Greetings, everyone. I'm Alex White, and I'm here to talk to you because I'm running for City Council, and I'm here with my friend and campaign manager, Dave.
Hi, everyone. And if you're a Facebook Live veteran, you've seen me do this before. So, but Alex and I are just going to have a conversation. This is our first one of these Facebook Live things, and I get the responsibility of, when we're done, putting this over on YouTube as well. So if you like the conversation, you joining in, then we can totally you can totally share this. That'd be awesome. And feel free. We'll also be posting it at the campaign website, and that's alexwhiteforrochester.org. So
and please share this.
Yeah,
that's the best. That's one of the ways you can help out the campaign. It doesn't cost you anything. Just share our stuff.
Yeah, and Alex and I, folks who have been following local politics for a while, know that Alex and I have been working on stuff together for a while, and just the discussion of the issues that we have tonight. And when I say discussion, that includes you as well. So in the comments, you can definitely chime in, ask questions, and we're going to talk at first for a while, but then any questions or anything like that you have, we'll definitely I'll lead that and we'll bring it up and you can hear what Alex has to say. He is running for city council, and there are 5 seats up, right? And they're at large, so it's all across the city. I've had people ask me, what district is it and stuff like that. So it's for the whole city. It's at large, and right now we're in the middle of the Democratic primary season, and that's on June 22nd. So that's what we're focused on right now, and then we'll tackle the general election after that.
But we will need your support in the Democratic primary. So if you're a Democrat and you're planning on voting, hopefully this will help convince you that I'm the right person here.
And if you're not a Democrat, like Alex was saying, you can always just share this stuff and chime in on the content of what we're talking about. And tonight we decided, just because of everything that's been going on in Rochester. Well, it's been going on for years, but we're going to focus on policing and public safety. And so I'll just kind of kick it off so that Alex can run with this. So it's obviously Rochester, this is not a good thing, but we've actually been a national leader in police brutality. And so get your thoughts on
we
that.
have led news stories for quite a while now around the nation, and we've captured national news in the wrong way. And in the last year, we've had a series of incidents, starting with Daniel Prude, and then with the police overreach on the protests to Daniel Prude, and then we had a 9-year-old girl pepper sprayed, and then we tackled and pepper sprayed a mom with a 3-year-old, and for no reason, by the way. And then we shot. I can't remember his first name.
Tyshawn
Jones, right. A young man who had no history of police interaction, had no problem, but apparently had a knife, and that was scary enough that the officer shot him. And, this has been, I want to say, about an average year for police problems in Rochester. They've just caught national attention this time.
Yeah. Well, so how about and we have it on our list of things to talk about. We're going to get into each one of those situations one at a time in a little bit. But because, again, this is a video that's supposed to be, yes, discussing issues, but it has to do with a political campaign, even if it is, it's local office. So Alex, why don't we talk about some of the things, because you've been working on these issues for a while. So why don't we talk about some of the things that you've worked on and accomplished as a community activist, and then later on we'll get into how that was going to work out when you get onto city council. But why don't you tell everybody some of the stuff that you've worked on and have accomplished in this?
I've been at this for a long time, and one of the things through previous races, I've drawn some attention to myself about this issue. And one of the things that was a big issue of mine was police body cameras. And I worked with UCLM, and I worked with ACLU and some other groups to make this a primary issue we would push for. We managed to get the mayor to accept that it was going to happen. And then we sat down and wrote policy. And this is really the brilliance of what we did, I think.
So can I just real quick, for folks who don't know, what's UCLM?
UCLM is the United Christian Leadership Ministry.
Okay.
And ACLU is the American Civil Liberties Union.
Yep.
And those two groups had great interest in this. And when the mayor said it was going to happen, we sat right down and wrote policy. And this was crucial because many places had been buying body cameras and distributing them with no policy really for how they were going to be used, or very minimal policy. And body cameras raise a bunch of privacy issues. They raise issues about when to turn them on, all sorts of things. And we felt that anything we thought of and we put in our model policy, when the department got around, they would have to make a policy that addressed any concern that we tried to address. Mm-hmm. And it actually worked that way. They sat down, they got a grant, they ended up using what we wrote, and when I had a big part in writing, is a model for the policy that they were going to implement. And it eventually went through. Body cameras got on. After this, I worked on the PAB, Police Accountability Board, to try to replace the Civilian Review Board. And I was a big fan of that. It got passed in a referendum 2 years ago, and now we're still waiting for it to be funded. Yeah. Recently, the governor has come out and said that every place with a police department has to come up with some ideas, and UCLM was one of the local groups, because they've been involved in this for a very long time, that was tasked with answering some questions and providing some input. And I was tasked by UCLM to get a committee together and to form our responses and to get that written up and submitted. And so that was a big part of what I did in response to that. And meanwhile, I also chaired another committee in which we wrote a de-escalation policy, which we wanted our PD and the sheriff and other police departments to adopt, and has gotten circulated in a lot of play and is included in the response to the governors. But even before it was included, we were shopping it to various police departments and did a presentation on it just recently to the chiefs of all the police departments in Monroe County. So we've been busy, and I've been really busy on this issue over the years.
Right. So let me kind of go. We don't have a script, and by the way, just because I keep looking away, we have the computers over here, and I'm doing two things. I'm doing the technical stuff as I'm trying to help facilitate the conversation. So I'm here. I'm with everybody. So I'm going to go a little bit off of what we were talking about, what we had planned on talking about. So there's been, I've seen personally from meetings I've been in with the Police Accountability Board Alliance, and from readings that I have in terms of local media and stuff like that, that city council as a body, I'm not going to say every single person on city council, but they seem to almost be going out of their way to make sure the Police Accountability Board isn't able to do what it's tasked with doing. So I was wondering if you could kind of talk about that a little bit. You mentioned funding, and that's part of it. Some are actually trying to cut funding.
Oh, yeah.
While the PAB itself, especially the executive director, is saying, hey, if you want us to do what the voters voted us in to do, we need more funding, and they're trying to cut it. So
yeah, they're talking about a 5% cut already to a budget.
Hasn't even started.
That was basically partial of what was needed. But, I actually view the Police Accountability Board as having a much larger task and scope than what most of the city council members and the mayor and other people envision, and that I feel that the police really are not very good at investigating themselves. And I feel that task should be taken away from them and given to PAB.
Yeah, for those who don't know, that historically the police actually investigate themselves when someone has a complaint, which results in, one, not very many police officers being found guilty of anything, and two, it kind of inhibits people to make complaints because they know it's going to go nowhere.
Roughly, now there's all sorts of ways that you can get something investigated by they call it PSS, but by internal affairs in the police department. There's a bunch of ways to get there. Some of them by external complaint, some by internal review, other things. But in general, 2% of the time they find that the police acted inappropriately.
Right.
And in all the cases that have happened in the last year, basically none of them. The police are not going to have found them acting inappropriately. And, I think that this is inherent in the system that is set up there. And that the police who are investigating this tend to be friends with, work with, identify with the people they're actually investigating. And I feel things would go much better if an external body investigated them. Now, people say, who would you find to do this? Well, virtually any lawyer is good at doing this sort of investigation. I mean, and they'd be cheaper, and it would cost us less money. Further, we could have experts. The police do not really consult with medical experts or other experts about things like when they see trauma on a victim, okay, that could have been caused by the police. They don't seek outside. They don't go seek outside advice on this.
Yeah, and that's what the PAB is supposed to do.
And rather than duplicating the services where PAB will duplicate, right, just have PAB do it. Yeah. They still would have to follow a whole pile of civil service laws. There would still be rights of appeal and all sorts of rules that would protect the police officers from being railroaded inappropriately. But I feel we would have a chance so that cases of excessive force and cases which are actually hurting the police's reputation and ability to perform their job could actually finally be addressed. And by addressing them, I believe most of the officers would shape up or ship out.
Yeah. And, it's funny. It's not funny.
Nothing here is funny, Dave.
Well, I didn't mean funny, but it's not even weird because it just, the way things go, it just kind of makes sense that all of what you're talking about is what when I'm saying we, because both of us have been involved in the Police Accountability Board Alliance when we were working to get this both to become a referendum and then to get voters to vote for it. And all of the stuff we had talked about. Yeah. Research has been done, not only by Alex somewhat, but by members of the PABA who have been doing this research for years in terms of how the procedure works with PSS and the statistics and all of this, all of the information that's come out about how the police operate when there's a problem, which is pretty much on a daily basis. So let's talk about some of those problems. We had planned on going there. So one of the reasons that we want to talk about some of the issues some of the incidents that have been happening recently, like this year, the past year, is because it highlights the problems, and then we can get into solutions, and then how, as a member of City Council, if and when you get elected to the City Council, what you'll do about it and how you'll make that happen. So let's kind of go let's go in descending order from most recent backwards. So the shooting of Tyshawn Jones.
Oh my! Tyshawn Jones is making a huge cry for help. He has a history of mental health problems. This is a cry for help. And the police immediately get out of their car and pull out a gun and have nothing else in their toolbox to approach this. Yep. They back up because there are all sorts of other resources the police department can bring to bear here. Some of them they even had on them. But again, the officers jumped out with their gun because they saw a knife and the only plan they had was wave the gun at him and hope he stops, if not shoot him. And they backed up, and as you know, if you back up any distance, eventually you bump into something, you corner yourself. When that happened and Tyshawn Jones was closing, they shot him. One of the officers shoots him 5 times at very close range. Now, this is not an isolated problem. Police deal with knives all the time around in this country and around the world. And many police departments have ways to deal with this that almost never end up with someone getting shot. And, you know, that case is this situation is one in which there's very little cooperation among the police. There's no attempt to surround the individual. There's no attempt to distract him. There's no attempt to verbally engage him. There's no attempt to use police cars and other things as obstacles so that it's not a straight line approach. All sorts of things here, and no one had the good sense to get any of their non-lethal equipment out. So they had, one of them even had a beanbag gun in their trunk. Why did that person not get back in the car, wait for Tyshawn to pass, get that out, and then help out? You know? And you know, a lot of people are saying, you know, it was a case the officer's life was in danger. Yes. But the officer's life was in danger because the training that the officers had and the recommendations and how they approached this led to them having no other option. And this is this highlights one of our major problems is training and approach. And you see that in the next incident, which was a woman has had a little problem at a drugstore in which they've accused her of stealing something. They called 911. A police officer driving to the store sees her, gets out, approaches her. Okay? Now, again, it's a white police officer, it's a black suspect, and he approaches her in, I want to say, the most confrontational way he could come up with. And she's cooperative. She shows him that she doesn't have anything. She even lets him do a cursory search for weapons on her body. She's got a 3-year-old. The officer then turns his back on a potential suspect and walks away. She takes this opportunity to run. Now, you're saying, oh, everything after this is because she ran. But it shouldn't have been. Why did the officer turn the back? Why didn't he approach her in a less confrontational way? And when he catches up with her after running, because she's not getting away with a 3-year-old, you know, that does not instantly mean that you should have a tug of war with the 3-year-old's body. You shouldn't slam mom to the ground where she's holding the kid. You shouldn't pepper spray her where the kid is in close proximity. And none of these things were necessary. The officers with a different approach and a different training probably come up to her, talk to her, find out that she has nothing, and she tells her side of the story, and he lets her go.
And let's talk about something real
Which,
quick.
by the way, let me finish
Okay.
1 second.
Okay.
Because eventually, in what happened, she gets arrested, she's taken in, they try to press all sorts of charges. The DA says, we can't make any of these stick.
And well, they arrested her with trespassing too. I don't think they even arrested her for
The trespassing charge they took her in on was a violation, similar to turning to not stopping at a red light.
Right.
That sort of level of crime is what she suffered from this abuse, and her child was traumatized from this abuse as a result of committing an incredibly minor violation, which was later dropped.
Right. So just to look at this, not only about this incident, but just in general, Daniel Ponder has been really hammering away lately with the statistics on just the type of, I'll put air quotes on this, crime that RPD deals with, and how the overwhelming amount of them have to deal with property, and dealing with property issues with violence by the police isn't congruent. I mean, to me, that's not an appropriate use of dealing with property issues.
I mean, this is one of the things that I've looked at a lot, and we have like 8,000 type 1 felonies committed in Rochester, and like 400 of them are violent. The numbers are tiny, and yet we use force on roughly 1,500 arrests result in the use of force by the police officers, which is just a huge percentage of our total arrests. And, other departments have half or lower this use of force amount, which tells me that we're doing something wrong. If for no other reason, using force is expensive. People get hurt, sometimes inappropriately, and as a result, we have lawsuits which we lose.
Yeah,
uniformly, we lose.
So even if, you don't, I'm being kind of facetious here, but even if you don't care about the police beating people up, okay, which you should.
Oh my God, you better.
Right, but even if you don't, even if for whatever reason you don't, then maybe you should care about all the money, your own taxpayer money, that is costing us in lawsuits and settlements and
millions of dollars every year.
Right.
Millions of dollars.
Yep.
2 years ago, I believe it was $7 million.
Yep.
Think about that.
Yep.
That's just money thrown away.
Yep.
They could have just made a pile and set it on fire And this is one of the huge problems. The excessive abuse of our police department not only is expensive, but it alienates the very community they want to work with to reduce crime. It's counterproductive to their job, and you see this in the video, in the body camera footage, which I get to see a lot of body camera footage. In the body camera footage of the woman with the 3-year-old, you actually see them try to get a witness statement, and no one who's there watching will give them a witness statement.
Yeah.
And this is not uncommon because people are terrified in many communities of Rochester. People are terrified of the police.
All right, so I want to make sure we have enough time. So let's talk about the 9-year-old that was handcuffed and pepper sprayed.
Okay, again, everything about this. In fact, Denver. Probably the only thing I need to say about this is Denver Police Department has said they are going to use the video of that as a what not to do video in police interactions. That's how bad the Denver Police Department sees this. And, the officer does everything wrong, including letting mom hit the kid who is a victim. The pepper spraying is obviously way out of bounds. The girl won't put her feet in the car, and so you pepper spray her? I mean, it's inhuman if you think about this. Moms deal with this, moms and dads every day deal with this problem. That their kid is, slow getting in, doesn't want to go someplace, won't put his or her feet in the car.
Even if it's in the middle of a tantrum.
Right.
That's what we're talking about, yeah.
Right. And this young lady here, this 9-year-old girl, is being treated as an adult because the officers do not identify her as a child. And at one point they even say to her, "You're acting like a little kid." And she says, I am a little kid. And, it's crazy.
Yeah.
You look at this, you look at her and you do not think teenager. Okay? She's obviously a little kid. And yet, because she's black, the department and our officers see her as older. They treat her differently. They treat her badly. The training they have, the approach they're doing is all wrong. It only is going to escalate and create more conflicts. And you see that with this 9-year-old girl. She's terrified of mom. that she has seen something traumatic that she thinks has happened. And, the police department and the officers, all of them, don't take her report as serious. They treat her as a problem rather than her as a victim or her as someone in trauma. And, you see this also in Daniel Prude, which is the famous one now that has been shown all over, in which Daniel Prude dies while in police custody after almost 40 minutes of lying on the cold pavement in the middle of a very cold March day. Remember last year it was really cold in March, and all these things contribute to it, and they start with ordering him onto his knees, handcuffing him, and he's naked, and they could have gotten him in a car, they could have gotten him in the ambulance basically 30 minutes earlier than they did. There's all sorts of opportunity to treat him as a human being in trouble, that there is some sort of problem here, and they need to approach this and solve this problem for this individual, and instead they treat him as a criminal because that's the only way they see it. And that's the problem. They're not approaching things from the approach that the person they're dealing with life matters. They're looking at that as that person is a problem. And so many comments come out from the officers in the body camera. Things like I don't have time for this, or it's cold, we need to wrap this up. These should not be phrases the department is using. Yeah. The officers should be trying to help the person to resolve their issue to get the best possible result they can for that person, and they're not. They're actually harming individuals.
So what, like, as Matthias is saying in the comments, let's kind of transition into this. So what he says was, first, people on the scene should be social workers or other community providers. So supposedly we've started to set up the infrastructure to do that, but as you can see from Tyshawn Jones and all of these other incidents that are happening, it's really not being utilized. So what do you see as the problem in terms of this? Because we're starting to set up the infrastructure. It's there now, but we're not using it. And then how can we make it so that it's being used?
It's been there for 4 years.
Well, they just added to it as well.
I know.
Okay.
But the forensic investigation team has been there for, I believe, 4 years or 5 years, maybe. It's a while. And they're not being used correctly. So we created another, crisis intervention team in the city, and it's not being used. At the moment, they're saying they're still writing policy. They're trying to determine when you get called. They're trying to determine the procedure for 911. What we really need to do is we need to integrate them in all calls. And we need them to be responding as if they were responding like police officers. And we're so far down on the curve of what we need to do here, we don't even know how many calls that we get yearly that they could respond to. So we don't even know the staffing levels we need. We don't even know, we don't have a good procedure for identifying when they should be called and sent. You call 211 and ask for it doesn't mean you'll get it.
Right.
This has like many things we've done. We've had many good ideas over the last 50 years on how to deal with policing, and too many of them die on the vine because we don't put the effort in, and we don't use the experts on the ground who've been working on this. We don't bring them in to help us resolve these issues. And, we also don't want to spend the money on it. And
well, I got a transition for you. Okay, yeah.
And, we should be reducing the police force and increasing these forces, because an officer, all the incidences that we've described, officers didn't need to respond to. Not one of them. And if you think about it, the gun was not necessary at any of these incidences. Not one of them. And And what we need is an appropriately trained personnel to do the sort of intervention that is necessary. And the way to pay for this is to reduce the police department, to replace officers with these other trained personnel who will be doing a job they are trained for. Because the police department at the moment is being asked to handle mental health issues, drug addiction issues, domestic disputes, noise complaints, conflict resolution. And, if you think about it, one time they were even asked to do parking. And we eventually placed them with a different type of officer to write parking tickets. We should be looking at that as the model for moving forward on how to deal with these problems. And we should be starting at the emergency calls, finding out what the numbers are, sorting them into categories, figuring out the amount of calls, when they're being made, what the staffing levels are needed, and appropriately assigning the person, hiring and assigning the personnel we need to deal with this level of calls.
Okay, so you're talking about doing something that's going to cost money, and you say take money that's being used to fund policing and use that to fund these changes, to fund more mental health personnel, and to have the system so that they actually get sent out to these calls, as opposed to they couldn't get there in time. The police were the first on the scene. So I get that. Okay, so it sounds like, and here's where I'm going, I'm transitioning for you. So it sounds like that you, as of right now, like today, if someone came up to you and said, "Hey, Alex, like, do you know where we could make these changes in funding? What cuts we can make in the police department to fund these things, like today?" Because I know folks are talking about, hey, we need to get rid of the entire police department and replace it with something. But we know that can't happen immediately, like as quickly as we would need to do. So you already have exact places in the budget where these could get cut right now.
Well, there's a bunch of things we could do. Okay, the first thing we can do is we can put 2 officers in the police car. Almost every call the police respond to require 2 officers. It seems obvious. Put 2 officers in the car. This will save millions of dollars in gas. It'll save millions of dollars in new cars, because we buy roughly $3 million of police cars a year. And we would need to at best buy half of that. Second,
and that sounds boring, right? Because we're not talking about something that's like just firing cops, which we can get to that. Okay,
we'll get there.
Yeah, but I mean, this is like the boring budget stuff that will save money that can go to the things that we're talking about.
And this is one of the big things that I think separate me from almost everyone else who's running, is this boring budget stuff is really the business of city council.
Yeah.
That's what they do. And they need to be able to look at these things and say, "Oh, look, I found $2.5 million. That's not nothing."
Right.
That
can fund a lot of counselors.
Oh, yeah. The next thing is the department's heavily over-policed. Heavily over-supervised. You look at the number of sergeants in hire in the department, and it roughly is 30%. Okay? That's an incredibly high supervision. That means there's one person supervising 2 other people. That ratio is so high that we could basically half it and still effectively and still have enough supervisors we could, if we asked them to and made them to, effectively manage and supervise the department. Also, in management, too many managers is as inefficient as too few. So we have way too many. And reducing this number, because these are incredibly highly paid people. Okay, we're looking at people who are pulling 6 digits or more. And we're looking at the moment getting rid of, even if we got rid of 50, which is easily doable on these numbers, we could be looking at a savings of roughly $7 million. And, this can be done by just not filling the positions. You don't have to fire anybody if you don't want to fire people. officers are retiring all the time, and we just need to offer them the option that your position is going away and you're going to be downgraded in position, and a number of them will take retirement. We can offer early retirement. There's ways to do it that are not hostile to people's careers because they entered here assuming certain things, and I don't want to ruin their life as a result, but I don't want them to ruin anyone else's. So I think we can find somewhere between $7 million and $12 million when we count benefits and everything else on this. And those two changes free us up to basically hire a lot of social workers. And, I also think we want to look at the emergency calls, because we know we get about 38,000 domestic calls. And that's roughly at 1 out of every 10 calls is a domestic call. And if we're not asking police to respond to them, we could reduce the patrol officers by 10%, or roughly 50 more patrol officers can go.
Now, notice, you're not talking about, you're just talking about this from a bureaucratic standpoint in terms of numbers. We're not talking about the officers who are just like out there terrorizing the streets. I mean, that's a different issue. Those folks, they need to go, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So and letting PAB do all of this will help get rid of them.
Okay.
And changing the way we police to a different de-escalation model rather than an escalation model will wash a number of them out as well. And it will wash out the worst of them.
Yeah. So I just want to make sure we understand that, and I see this as something that separates your campaign from just about everybody else's who's running this year, is that, you have something that's focused on the individual rogue cops who are out there doing immense damage to the community. You're focusing on the bureaucratic aspect of it, where there's waste and we can use that money better. And then, and this is where, again, another transition, but you also, which we haven't talked about yet, have a vision of down the road of not just having a police force. In fact, you were just talking to me about that. And that's why we called this video Public Safety in Rochester, having a vision of what public safety in the city would actually look like. So could you kind of get into that a little bit too?
Yeah, because one of the big ideas is that public safety is not policing. It's not fire department, totally. It's a lot of things lead to a reduction in crime and lead to people feeling safer.
And by the way, there's going to be videos on that. So don't worry. In theory, we're hoping to have one a week. So
the first thing I want to do is I want to form a public safety department with the police department, the fire department, emergency call center. I want to also have in there the crisis intervention team, Pathways to Peace, and I want to actually have another force of street intervention people to deal with the calls that we don't need a police officer for as well. So like noisy parties, quality of life issues, regular disputes, things like that we don't necessarily need the armed officer with. Now, all of that, I want to have a cooperative effort among them to produce safety. And that requires some overall planning rather than just taking each section. And at the moment, crisis intervention is under one thing, Pathways to Peace is under another, and emergency communications and police and fire are all separate departments, and there's very little cooperation among any of them, and it's time that we change that, and that we see public safety as the primary thing. And the next thing is that, studies have been done by the Center for American Studies, I believe, which have looked at calls to 911 and found on their numbers, between a third and 2/3 of them do not need a police officer to respond to. And some of them can be responded to by the appropriate would be mental health. Some of them need something less, even. Don't need that specific training. And I feel that we should have, like we have people going around writing parking tickets, we should have a set of officers who are trained differently and have a different responsibility to handle those issues as well.
They wouldn't even have to be considered officers.
No, I would rather not use that word.
Yeah.
And so I want them to be in there as well. And all of this is going to reduce the police department to a more appropriate size for a city our size and for the task that they actually need to do, because they're still the person you want to call when there's a gun. Okay? So if we right size all of this, we get them cooperating together, we can start to look at things that actually reduce crime. And we can actually look at things that make us safer, things like summer jobs for kids, recreation, and all the things that actually add to a better city. And we can even talk about streetscaping and, vacant lots and things like that in a public safety setting.
That was my question. So would you say that not only talking about police, fire, mental health, these sort of things, but you could also make the argument that under this umbrella, there should be some involvement with economic policy, making sure folks aren't living in poverty, because that causes a lot of crime. And we're going to get to that in a future video coming up.
I'm sure we're going to talk about homeless in another video. That's
right.
Another issue of public safety.
Right.
And basically, we're doing nothing about homelessness.
Yeah, this is connected. All of
right,
this is
and
connected.
all these things come together to add to public safety, and all should be things that we have an overall plan on how to deal with. And, at the moment, we don't. We have no overall vision, we have no overall plan, and we're not even looking at it as one general problem. We're looking at it as a lot of little separate siloed problems. And we're not going to get good solutions so long as we continue to do that.
Okay, so I can tell you this as campaign manager, Dave, there is some more information with a few links, but there'll be more at the campaign website, which is alexwhiteforrochester.org. So let me ask you this. Let me talk about some political kind of a campaign thing. So you're running, you get in there, we're going to get you on the ballot, and you're going to be one of the 5 that wins the primary in June, and then you're going to win in the general election come November. So now, come January, you're going to be a member of City Council. And you have these ideas that's backed by data and studies and, in my opinion, common sense. So, all right, you're sitting in there and you're one of the 9, but look, if these ideas were seen as being so awesome by the people who are in there right now, they'd be working on them. So the job is going to be yours to figure out how to get the other 8 people who are on there to be on board. Could you talk a little bit about that? How are you going to get these changes to happen?
Well, PAB is actually a fascinating study in how you get something done in Rochester. And it's funny, if you asked city council members back, 4 or 5 years ago, before PAB was really a strong thing, many of the same council members who eventually all vote yes, a couple years before that, all were opposed. And what it took a lot of effort, but it also took a city council member to come out and say, I'm for this. We need to actually move in this direction. And they provide cover for the other city council members to come on board. And also, who wants to be the city council member who stands in the way of reducing crime? Who wants to be the city council member who stands up for police brutality? Nobody. Nobody does. But it's a difference between taking the lead. And you need a city council member who's going to say, this is a primary issue for me. And I feel that we need to do this, and I'm going to keep pushing it and bringing it up. And you can ignore it, you can be against it, or you can find ways to modify it to get on board so that we can have something that will work and make our city better. Because they all want to make the city better. I mean, no one goes through all the effort of running for city council because they want the salary or the glamour. I mean, it's just not there. What this is about is it's about service. It's about making the city better. And I've worked with many of these city council members on multitude of issues already. They know who I am, and I know that you get the answer a lot of, yeah, but. Well, when there's someone on the inside saying, well, we solved the but, you can then move forward.
And you're confident that you can be that bridge.
Well, I've been fighting these for this issue and many others for a very long time. I've been successful on many things, and I feel that when you're in the city council seat, it's not like I'm going to change and become quiet.
Right.
Okay? This is not something that, this is not something that I don't believe passionately about. And I've put too many hours in to waste an opportunity like being on city council. So, this is about fighting, and I've been attending city council meetings, I've been watching things, I've been reading budgets. I have a lot of inside technical expertise. And, you bring that to bear and you can start to get something done.
Awesome. Well, time-wise, I mean, we do. If anybody has any more questions or comments, they put them in the comment section now. Otherwise, this conversation can continue offline. I mean, you can continue to make comments here. We are continually monitoring both the Facebook page and the YouTube channel, and Alex can respond to any questions or comments. Not just doing this live, but from now through he's on city council as well. So feel free to do that. We're not going to take up too much more of your time. So we'll be back next week. We actually haven't decided which topic we're going to do next week, but it'll be something that probably, if you go to the website, alexwhiteforrochester.org, you can look at what's already up there and figure out, okay, one of these topics are coming up next. So thanks for tuning in. Again, please take the time, if you get a chance, to share this video, whatever social media outlet you use, and let's just keep the conversation going. And if you are eligible to vote in the primary on June 22nd, we hope that one of your 5 choices will be Alex White. Anything you want to say?
Well, I want to thank everyone for watching. And I hope that you tune into some of our other videos, because we're going to tackle big issues from poverty to neighborhood development to great issues like zoning. Probably at some point will come up.
Zoning problem.
Yeah. So this is going to touch on everything from vacant houses to increasing wealth and lowering your taxes.
Yep.
All things that we can talk about, and because I have a plan.
All right, we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in.